Good afternoon, Titans. This is the non-linear guide to LGBTQ plus history presented by Prism. Before we get started, we just want to mention that this presentation contains themes of homophobia, transphobia, sexism, racism, rape, and sexual assault, mentions of the Holocaust, mentions of death, and other forms of persecution and physical violence. I'd also like to apologize because we pride ourselves with being an inclusive club. And while we tried our hardest to make this an inclusive presentation, we recognize that we did not succeed in this attempt and that it is still very Eurocentric. We hope that despite this, you enjoy what we have to present to you today, but also that you will not hold this against us and that you give us another chance next year to make a more inclusive presentation. That being said, let's get on with it. First up is the original lesbian herself, Sappho. She is known for her poetry depicting her love for women. We get the words sapphic and lesbian, both meaning women and femmes who love women, from her and her home island Lesbos. Her poetry is still read and analyzed across the world. Next is Alan Turing. He was a British crypto analyst during World War II. He and his team cracked the Enigma code, ending the war in the European theater. He also invented the Turing test and what is now known as AI. So Siri and Alexa, you have because of him. Years after, he was arrested for being gay and forced into hormone therapy. He was later found dead in his home 3 years after his arrest. It was ruled a suicide, though no evidence was found to support it. Many historians believe the British Secret Service killed him because he was technically a threat to national security. He was later pardoned for his crimes in 2015. The movie The Imitation Game, featuring Benedict Cumberbatch, is about his life, though it is wildly inaccurate and very homophobic. Dr. Evelyn Hooker. In 1971, Hooker had homosexuality taken off of the official list of mental disorders. Her research began when she realized that all the gay men that were being used to justify this diagnosis already had a prior history of mental illness unrelated to their sexuality. Christine Jorgensen. She was the first openly transgender celebrity. She served in the military during World War II and transitioned after she came back to the US. Jorgensen used her celebrity status to advocate for trans youth and destigmatize gender confirming surgery. Lily Elba. Elba was a Danish painter who became one of the first people to ever get gender confirming surgery. After transitioning, Elba became a model for her wife, Greta Wegener's paintings. Some of her most famous artwork are Lily Elba, though that fact was excluded from the book and movie The Danish Girl, both about Elba's life. Both also excluded the fact that Goethe was the most famous lesbian painter in Europe at the time. Frances Thompson, a Black intersex anti-rape activist. She was one of the 3 women to testify before Congress about the Memphis riots in 1866 and the rape all 3 women experienced at the hands of white terrorists. She was also the first non-cis woman to testify before Congress. Thompson was later arrested for cross-dressing in 1876. Her arrest was used to justify the rape of Black women, as radical terrorist groups used her to perpetuate the idea that women lie about being raped. Same-sex marriage is legal in 29 out of 202 countries. The Netherlands was the first country to legalize same-sex marriage on April 21st, 2001. The US legalized it in 2015. Two-spirit. This term was adopted in 1990 as the umbrella term for the third gender in many indigenous cultures. While two-spirits are part of the LGBTQ plus community, only Native Americans can be labeled as two-spirit, as it is more than gender identity. It is also a sacred position assigned by the tribe. The Lavender Scare. Part of the Cold War was McCarthyism, a witch hunt which harmed many marginalized communities by associating certain traits with communism and demonizing communism and, through association, those traits. Homosexuality was one of those traits, and in 1953, under the Eisenhower administration, homosexuals were declared a threat to national security. This legalized full invasive searches and gave employers the right to deny employment or fire employees because of their sexuality. The AIDS epidemic. HIV and AIDS are immunocompromising diseases which arose in the 1980s. It was especially prevalent in the LGBTQ plus community and almost wiped out an entire generation of queer individuals. The mishandling and mocking of the epidemic under the Reagan administration has only led to further stigmatize the LGBTQ plus community. Josephine Baker and Frida Kahlo. Josephine Baker was a famous dancer during the Harlem Renaissance and later became a voice in the civil rights movement. Meanwhile, Frida Kahlo was a famous painter and a strong voice in the Mexicano movement. Both were proud bisexual women who were at one point lovers. Caster Semenya. Semenya is an intersex middle distance Olympic athlete from South Africa. She has recently been banned from competing in her usual events on Olympic level because of the allegation that she is really a man, because she has testosterone levels which are higher than a cisgender woman's, but less than a cisgender man's. And they think that because of that, she has an unfair advantage over cisgender competitors. She does not hold any records for her events. All records for the 800-meter run are held by cisgender women who are white, and she is not unbeatable. Yet her controversy has sparked a global call for regulation of trans youth in sports, despite the fact that she is not trans. In 2016, the UK issued a travel warning to all LGBTQ plus citizens, advising them against travel to the US, as it was not a safe country for them to visit. The Gay and Lesbian Kingdom of the Coral Seas. In 2014, Australia failed to legalize same-sex marriage. This led to many protesters to leave the country and start a new country on one of the surrounding islands. The new country officially declared war on Australia. In 2017, the Secretary of War refused to have the pride flag hung in his office, he said, not because he was homophobic, but because he refused to hang any enemy flag in his office. Same-sex marriage was later legalized that same year, and the country dissolved. Sally Ride, the first woman that NASA sent to space with 100 tampons for 6 days, was also bisexual. President James Buchanan, he was the 15th president and the first bisexual president. King County was originally named after his boyfriend, William Rufus King. The county was later renamed after MLK because both Buchanan and King were racist, and Buchanan declared war against the state of Utah. Alvin Ailey, founder of Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater. He was the first queer man to perform on Broadway. He wanted to create a safe place to nurture Black talent. Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater was founded in 1958 and is still going strong. Their performances tell thought-provoking stories about the African American experience and struggle for freedom and equality. Music industry. While the LGBTQ plus community has always had its place in the music industry with David Bowie, Freddie Mercury, and Elton John, more and more artists are coming out and have created a musical genre to coincide with the queercore subculture. Such artists featured are Hayley Kiyoko, Cavetown, Dodie, Girl in Red, Chica and Halsey, and many more. Ma Rainey, the mother of blues, was famous for being one of the first ever recorded blues singers. She and her husband formed the group Rainey and Rainey Assassinators of the Blues. She is credited for introducing blues music to younger audiences. She was arrested for having an affair with her backup singer. However, she was found not guilty on all charges. Her song, Prove It On Me, talks about this incident and how it was completely true. And not only did she love women, but she also loved wearing suits and doing other masculine things. World War II. During the Holocaust, a variety of people were taken prisoner and subjected to the horrors of the many concentration camps across Europe. Gay men and women were assigned a pink triangle and forced to work themselves to death and undergo correctional therapy. However, when the Allies liberated the camps at the end of the war, the queer prisoners were not released and made to carry out their sentences because homosexuality was illegal in most Allied countries and Germany prior to Hitler's chancellorship. Canada's Rainbow Railroad. In 2006, Kamali Powell started a charitable organization dedicated to helping LGBTQ plus citizens escape persecution from their home countries. More recently, the the Rainbow Railroad has paired with several UN countries to help citizens in Russia after anti-gay concentration camps were opened in 2017, and nearly 40 men went missing in the course of a week. The US is not one of those UN countries, but there is a location in New York where the Rainbow Railroad operates, and US citizens can donate to the organization. Kim Coco Iwamoto. In 2006, Iwamoto became the highest ranked openly transgender official in the United States. She was elected to Hawaii's Board of Education, and in 2020, she ran for governor of Hawaii, though sadly she lost. The Hays Code. In 1950, multiple motion picture codes were passed in Hollywood dictating what could or could not be shown on television and cinema. The Hays Code specifically banned the inclusion of queer characters. This gave rise to queer coding, which is when a character is given queer attributes without being explicitly outed as gay. This was a loophole to have LGBTQ plus representation during the time. However, now that the Hays Code has been abolished, queer coding is just used to perpetuate stereotypes and try to seem inclusive while pandering to homophobic audiences. For example, Disney. I also mentioned earlier that the Imitation Game, and I hinted that the Danish Girl were also both transphobic and homophobic. And though this is not due to queer coding, this is due to a trope called bury your gays, where the queer character ends in tragedy, and the tragedy is sort of justified as is due to them being queer. For example, Alan Turing is killed or is subjected to hormone therapy and arrested because he is gay. And the tone of the movie is that he deserved it because he is gay. That this is the ultimate outcome for gay characters, is to end in tragedy because of who they are. This is a terrible assumption to have and should not be thought of to be true. Be the you you've always been proudly. We hope you enjoyed this fun history lesson, that you've learned so much from it, and that you recognize the importance of history, because this community has been entirely erased and made to seem like we just popped up in 2015 with the want of same-sex marriage, and now we're trying to invade everybody's space. But we've existed throughout history, and people need to remember that. So have a great day. Love yourself, love others, be kind to yourself, and be kind to others.